council, and there are some things on here that are suggested to go to say first reading. So at first reading would be the public's opportunity to get up and make your presentation if you'd like. And if you'd also like to forward anything that you have to say or a presentation into us, that's also acceptable and a good idea. But for tonight, we don't do public participation. It's not something the committee of the whole allows. So there is some confusion because it's a public meeting, but it's a different type of public meeting than a regular council meeting. So I just wanted to start with that because I apologize that we had the sign up sheet up there for public participation. That was left there from our budget meeting last night. So we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Recommendation that committee of the whole approve the agenda for February 3rd, 2026 meeting is presented. I thought we just did these. Okay, with the addition. Recommendation that committee of the whole approve the minutes from November 3rd, 2025 meeting is presented. Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Strong. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimous. Presentations. Tyson, you're up.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. So we are reaching an exciting point in the wastewater treatment plant upgrades and expansion project where we can replace the existing headworks component of the plant. The headworks acts as a screen as wastewater enters the plant and removes items like grit, gravel, plastic, wipes, pretty much anything you can think of that enters the storm or the sewer system. They're all unwanted through the treatment process. So the headworks replacement work for the wastewater treatment plant is scheduled to commence in early March and last until sometime in May. The replacement of key components of the treatment process comes with some temporary drawbacks to the wastewater system as described in the following statement. So the town of Lunenburg is currently planning to perform equipment replacement at the Lunenburg wastewater treatment plant. This work is tentatively scheduled. Interruption to the wastewater treatment process is tentatively scheduled for one 21-hour period from 8 to 5 a.m. during the week of March 2nd, one 21-hour period from 8 till 5 during the week of March 9th, and one 6-hour period from 8 till 2 p.m. during the week of March 30. These dates could change depending on weather. It is estimated that during the scheduled equipment replacement work, approximately 6,800 cubic meters of wastewater will be released into the Lunenburg front harbour from 3 relief points located near 3 Brook Street, which is our Brook Street lift station, 34 Blue Nose Drive, which is our Fisherman's Wharf lift station, and 176 Blue Nose Drive, which is our Blue Nose lift station at the other end of Blue Nose Drive. So these locations occasionally see overflows of wastewater during heavy rain events due to the system design to relieve pressure from high volumes in the collection system due to wet weather. The equipment replacement work is integral to the system's operation and must be completed by redirecting wastewater flows during these periods. As a result, the town of Lunenburg has scheduled for the equipment replacement to take place during no or low precipitation events due to the combined system. Taking this approach will help minimize the impact on customers and the environment while ensuring customers continue to have wastewater service during the period. There's some notes there about things people within the system can do to minimize the impact. And the project itself has several mitigation measures as well that we'll be employing. So we've talked about doing it in a period where we're not in a melt or not during a high precipitation event. We're combining tasks within those combined 48 hours to minimize the amount of time the system is down. The bypass period scheduled for spring, which is normally a period of more dilute wastewater. The wastewater system, collection system itself, will be pumping down lift stations to minimize the amount of volume in them when the shutdown commences. The temporary screens within the plant as well will be constantly monitored and raked to make sure they're working as they should. And then that final 6-hour shutdown that we're talking about, we're looking at ways to perform that work using PPE so that it may not be required, which would reduce the total time offline to 42 hours. So as part of the process, the town is required to perform notifications of key stakeholders, including the public, in order to be able to submit for the necessary environmental permitting. That's only possible once we've got these dates relatively well locked down. These notifications need to be released by the town tomorrow to not delay the contractor's schedule. So it's all part of undertaking the work and the project. We're just following the process that the regulators have in place that allow us to have the permits to proceed with the work. So once the headworks upgrade is complete, it will provide an immediate benefit to our existing treatment process over our worn out existing headworks. So a lot of information there. But if there are questions, I can answer them. But again, just want to stress this is a necessary part of the project where the new headworks is essentially will be sitting in the same footprint as our existing headworks. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyson. Any questions or comments for Tyson? Councillor Babineau.
Through the chair, just wondering, and maybe we're too early in the process to know, but can we foresee if there are going to be other events like this where we actually have to sort of shut things down and pump into the harbor?
Through the chair, I would say there's a good chance when we're into the UV disinfection aspect, upgrading that portion, we could be into something similar, but the contractor hasn't actually provided details of the process of how they plan to perform that aspect of the work. So once we have those details, I'd be in a better position to answer that question for sure.
Thank you. Anyway, Deputy Mayor.
Through the chair, you mentioned as well that there were some things that the public may be able to do to mitigate the amount of overflow, so those things are detailed in information that'll be shared.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So to reduce pressure on the wastewater system and minimize environmental impact during the temporary maintenance period, we're asking Town of Lunenburg utility customers to reduce wastewater flows. Please minimize use of running water, flushing toilets, doing laundry, dishwashers, that kind of thing, where the grey water enters the wastewater system.
Thank you.
Just to add, if I may, that that's good to know. I mean, it's not great news to share, and yet it is part of a bigger picture. So I think that's the message, that it's important for people to realize that this is a short-term pain for a much longer-term gain, and a necessary part of a process to improve the whole system. So thanks for the information.
Anybody else? Councillor Greek.
Through the chair, Tyson, through these events, do you expect there'll be, potentially any visual or noticeable effect on the harbor when it's flowing in?
Through the chair, that's a good question. I guess it depends on what enters the system during that time. So it wouldn't be surprising if there was some noticeable impact. I guess there's an explanation for it, so that's understanding it is good, but yeah, that would be entirely possible.
I suppose just to make sure that, that we do get the news out there so that it's, not potentially a surprise if people do notice it when these events are occurring.
So this is obviously just the initial notification. As these times are locked in, Public Works through a town's communication can sort of better define these periods so that everyone understands the specifics of when they're starting, the expected duration, and we can also notify people when the system's back online, just so that awareness is shared by all.
Thank you, Jan. And I think that something like this, so if you start at the, say, ABCO and go around the circle, Foundry Museum, Fisherman's Wharf, Clearwater, Ocean Gear, AK, Dory Shop, and Build Nova Scotia, who owns multiple buildings, those people, we should knock on their door or make a personal visit or call, phone them actually to make sure they're aware that this is going to happen, because they're going to be the ones that are most directly impacted or might actually notice what's happening. So I just maybe we could make direct contact with those individuals and then do as much publicity, I guess, or as we can or want to do about it. But I think the people down along the waterfront in those industries should definitely be made aware in a personal contact way, whether it's an email or a text or a phone call. But I think that's really important, especially the Fisherman's Wharf, because sometimes they hang like crates of lobsters off the side of their boats and they might not want to do it one of those 3 days. And we might want to recommend that you don't fish off the wharves any one of those 3 days also. So just things like that. But those businesses are very important, I think, to notify. So thank you. Anybody else? Okay, well, there's nothing for us to do except thank you very much, Tyson. And that's the only thing on the agenda for you tonight. So if you want to take off, you can. Thank you. So number 7 is correspondence. Number 8 is business arising and unfinished business. Number 9 is new business. So the first thing on our agenda is 9.1, information report, voluntary application for municipal heritage designation, the train station.
Thank you, Your Chair. So provided to council tonight is just a follow-up report to the August purchase and sale agreement of the train station. We have received a voluntary application in regards to a municipal heritage designation on the old train station. At the time, council had noted that they were not interested in putting a designation on the train station at that time and added into the purchase and sale agreement protections of heritage defining elements and character defining elements of the building. So within the scope, with the application, because a decision of council was already made, the request was that it would go to the Heritage Advisory Committee. But again, the council has already weighed in on this, and it's not appropriate for an advisory committee to provide additional feedback once council has made a decision. So I'm coming back to council with the application and asking, do you wish to reaffirm your decision within that scope of non-designation of the property at this point? And then secondly, from that, do you wish to have a formal motion at the next council meeting?
What is the pleasure of council? Deputy Mayor?
Can I just ask, I know our heritage officer isn't here. Well, yes, Mark is here, so he can. I'm just wondering, what is the benefit of a municipal heritage designation, or what is the protection offered, or is there sort of clarity on why this designation is significant and desirable for, according to Mr. Anderson, for sure.
Through the chair, excuse me. Yeah, so basically a heritage designation is meant to help conserve the heritage value of that level of government. So in this case, municipal related heritage value.
Through you, Chair, within this very similar, like it protects character defining elements specifically to the building. There was concern within the scope of what potential renovations would be done to the building with the concept that the second story women's group and their workers would protect the character defining elements. The other factor is this was also brought up in the the heritage report, that it was highlighted by staff that there was an error in including that because it's outside the jurisdictional boundaries of the old town. It can be applied for, but again, it doesn't have the same boundaries or protections within the heritage bylaw that we have. As well, with the designation, potential for limiting other construction or what they need to do on the building is a factor in that as well. So that was why in the discussions back in August, that was what was presented to council, and where council felt comfortable was putting the information into the purchase and sale agreement at this time, with the caveat that once work is complete, as long as they protected those heritage elements, we could approach the property owner at that point and see if they're interested in a designation, or council can look at a designation at that point. But that was what the direction of council was at that time.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I understand that it is to protect, and I know that there are proposed heritage character defining elements identified. I'm just not sure what constitutes, character defining element. And I guess, and to what end, particularly for this building, although it's definitely a unique building in our community, and it does have some historic significance as far as its use and it being kind of and I think it's kind of credit to the community as a whole that it's been maintained to the condition it has been maintained for all of these years, since its use was abandoned in 1969 or something. So I think it's lovely that it's still being maintained. And as I have said, when this issue came before us previously, I think the best way to ensure a heritage building is maintained and is protected is by continuous use. And certainly the new owners, proposed owners are looking to do just that. So, and I've also expressed a willingness to protect the building. I don't know what purpose what further would be, what benefit further we would get by designating it. And the timing is certainly not ideal for a discussion on this. I mean, the building has been there and has been in the ownership of the town for, how many, 50 years? So to now, at the point of sale, raise this and raise questions of trust with new owners is problematic for me. So be happy to have this laid to rest at this point in time.
Councillor Strong.
The more I think about this, the more I get concerned, because this could happen with the sale of almost any building in the town of Lunenburg, that a person could come out of the woodwork. And I know we have some 1700s houses in this town that don't have protection on it. And I'm just wondering what, in line with what the deputy mayor is getting at, what purpose does it raise at this point, and what benefit is it to the train station or to a private member of the public who owns a 1700s house that doesn't want to have the municipal heritage on it? I think that's a concern of us legally too.
Any other comments? Councillor Babineau?
For me, the piece that stands out is in the staff report here, staff, and I would agree with them, feel that bringing this back to HAC would put them in a precarious position to have something go before them that's already had a decision made at the council level when their purpose is to provide recommendations to council on a pending decision. So that, I mean, I don't personally have an appetite to send it back to them or to make a decision again at the council level. So.
Councillor Daphne?
So I'm going to be very bold. This should not go back. I'm kind of perturbed that Mr. Anderson did not talk to the owners of the train station and consult with them, and that he took it upon himself to do so. I understand that he feels very strongly about the heritage aspects of the town. I understand that. But I have no fear that the train station will be altered severely at all. I have no fear of that. I know I grew up with two of the girls. They will do right by the train station. They will do right by us. And yeah, so no, it definitely should not go back to the HAC. Home. What did you do? I destroyed everything. We're going home.
Okay, Councillor Strong.
I do commend the report though, and some of it is, I haven't seen before, so maybe procedurally it should have come before we made a decision in August. But I don't think it would have even changed my mind at that point, so.
Any other comments? Councillor Fullerton?
I agree with my fellow councillors that I see no benefit in bringing the matter back before council for another decision.
Okay, so we can move on then, can we not? Okay, we'll move on to 9.2. Update on the Housing Accelerator Fund. There's a recommendation there, but first we'll get Alan and our new senior planner to take it away.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So I'm aware that the HAF has been in front of you several times because there's been considerable work done on it, but I just wanted to provide some slides. If you want to go to the next one. Can you go to presentation view? Yeah, it's a little small. My eyes are getting old, so. Slideshow, almost there. From the beginning. Perfect. There we go. So just to provide a little bit of background, just to remind everyone why we're doing the Housing Accelerator Fund. The overall intent of the program that was established by CMHC and the federal government was to speed up the delivery of housing. The big focus under the HAF is the removal of administrative and regulatory barriers where those may be, and to incentivize housing of various types, support efforts to better track progress in housing markets. One of the issues associated with the reason we're in the position that we're in is we weren't necessarily tracking things appropriately or understanding how housing is actually developing, in particular how our population was fluctuating over time. So part of this is to also pick up on some of that. The other thing that's important about the HAF is this is a contract. So we've established a contribution agreement with CMHC to deliver on a series of initiatives. And those are all accepted under the Housing Action Plan, which you all would have been somewhat familiar with and identified. So in our agreement specifically, we've identified creating incentives for affordability and accessibility, which have to a large extent been completed, to understand limitations of infrastructure and creating supports for housing, utilizing town property, which is the focus primarily of the discussion today, to support housing delivery, and providing increased guidance on heritage provisions. There's 6 initiatives in total. So the agreement was originally signed in 2024, and we have an end date of 2028. There's 2 sort of deadlines associated with the agreement. One is we have to have our initiatives completed by 2027, and that we have to have our housing targets met by 2028. The targets associated with it are in the report. And the intent of the targets is to go above and beyond what we would normally do over a standard 3-year period to accelerate housing. So today, the initiatives that we have completed are, you've gone too far. Back one. You're getting ahead of me. So we've completed a few. So we have an affordable housing tax relief program and policy. We need to promote the program. We haven't seen a lot of applications to date. I don't actually think we've had any applications to date. We have an accessible housing incentive policy. We also need to do some promotion around that. We have done some work around understanding water, sanitary, and storm system development master plan to understand some of the limitations to the existing system that may limit future housing units coming online, and to sort of mitigate some of that for developments and applicants to the town. We've established a cost-sharing program for street services extensions. Again, still not a lot of uptake at this point, but we need to promote the incentive. What we haven't completed, so next slide, is one that was established early on. It was actually identified as initiative number 2, which is the divestiture of town property with agreements for housing. Today, we're sort of seeking direction. To talk about that one a little bit more, the intent of that initiative is fundamentally to identify town-owned property, which has been a pretty standard component of all HAF agreements in Nova Scotia and across Canada, to say we have public land, we're going to utilize it for the provision of housing in one effect or another. And there has been some work underway, and we have sold properties within the town in the past. The parameters around how we're to divest, we haven't actually explored fully at this stage. But to meet the actual intent of this initiative, we have to divest of some form of property. The agreements component is a little bit, again, part of the discussion around in the report. So the agreement as defined identifies comprehensive development agreements or restrictive covenants. Now, these are 2 fundamentally different control mechanisms, and what a CDD and a DA, what they would be in the Nova Scotia context, are outlined in the report, but they're essentially agreements to allow for things that wouldn't be permitted under the land use bylaw, or in the case of a CDD, essentially establishing a secondary plan for a given area. These are long processes, they're legal agreements, and ultimately what they're trying to do is allow for things that wouldn't normally be permitted under the existing planning documents. Restrictive covenants, on the other hand, are a different form of agreement and control on property. They're typically negative in nature, so they restrict what you can do, hence the restrictive component. They do run with the land. And one of the other major components of it is there has to be 2 parcels associated with it. So one has to have the covenant that restricts it, and the other one has to have a parcel that benefits from it. So we see these in things more commonly, I think, in the public around grocery stores and restrictive covenants, where as a property is divested of, say Sobeys leaves a site, they're not allowed to use it for anything. You can't use it for a grocery store again. And so that's usually how they're utilized. We have had a conversation with our solicitor around this. It might require a little bit of working, but we may be able to establish covenants that would facilitate housing, which was ultimately the intention of this. Land plus an agreement to facilitate housing. So it can be done. I think one of the underlying, the other initiative as well too is the Affordable Housing Grant Program. So there's a first draft that's already been completed. There's some additional work that needs to be done to sort of bring it before we bring it to council. Just some internal work to see how we could potentially administer that. The expectation is this would be a grant that would be provided to applicants for specific types of housing. Examples in Nova Scotia would be sort of secondary and backyard suites grants. Provincial government would have grants associated with certain provisions for affordable housing. So if you do an affordable unit, you receive a grant component of maybe 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, et cetera. but we do have to sort of hash out how these are going to be applied, when they would be applied. The one of the underlying themes to this whole situation, if you want to go to the next slide. So this one in particular is set to be completed in August 2025. So we're a little bit over time on this one. That's okay. We've talked to CMHC. They understand that things change, situation adjusts. And so consequently, we're trying to work out a potential arrangement to address this in short order as much as possible. Currently, we don't have any property identified to do this. We do have a divestiture policy, as you would all be aware of, and there is a process for identifying land and evaluating it, which is ultimately what we would like to do as staff, and then come back to council with some recommendations for those properties. The target for this initiative in the agreement is only 8 units. That's the target that we're expected to hit with this. So not overly large, fairly suitable in terms of allocation. So we do need a property to implement the agreements. We do intend to do some screening. The main thrust here is really around the fact that if we don't do the initiatives, we lose funding. So we've already had 2 allocations from the half. We have 2 more that are pending. If we don't complete the initiatives, then we either don't receive them, any further funding, or we have a reduction. The other component of this agreement too is the actual housing targets. So we're under by quite a bit. And so part of the gearing now is trying to find opportunities to up our building permit numbers effectively to make sure that we have the full tranche of all the funding that would be allocated. So, which might require a little bit of work on our end, as well as some promotion as well too. That was a lot of information. I'm sorry. I'm going a little bit quickly. So this one is really the one that we're not really sure how. We have an idea of how to proceed. Ultimately, we would follow the divestiture policy. We would look to design some restrictive covenants on it so that it would be allocated for housing. CMHC is happy. We continue to receive our funding. We can apply that funding to the other initiatives that would also support affordable housing. That's essentially where we would like to go with this. Again, the issue is timing. We really only have 1 year to get this complete. Ideally, they would like it done last week, but that's not the situation we're in. So there is some flexibility there. But I think that's it, yeah, for me. So I'm sure there's a lot of questions about a lot of components to that, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Alan. Councillor Strong.
Thank you. So what is the total of the allocation so far that we've received from CMHC?
I have to refer to my report. So I don't have things memorized to date. So, okay. The total amount received would have been 579,471.50 cents. I'm not sure why we get to 50 cents, but we do.
Thank you. And is there any information on the amount of, or the percentage of public lands that other municipalities have dedicated for housing? As you know, I'm always saying we're the 4 square mile town.
Yes.
And only so many. I mean, we went through this process last year with identifying a land for a daycare. And it's pretty slim pickings at this point. So is there some kind of a rule that's being followed? Like, does the municipality have to give up all of its public lands, or 20%, or?
Through the chair. So each municipality has allocated amounts based on what they've already declared surplus. If we look at HRM, I think they had 27 sites that were identified, ranging in size from 7,000 square feet to several acres, but that's HRM. If we look at Wolfville as a comparator in terms of size, they're looking to allocate roughly about 3 sites, but they're relatively small, and 2 of them are actually repurposed from parking lots. And so we don't have any requirement in terms of how much land where the land is, or even really how many units we get on it. We just have to show progress towards conducting the initiative.
Deputy Mayor?
Thanks very much. It's helped a lot because this was thrown at us. It was initiated before we all arrived on the scene, and we were playing catch up with it ever since. So this was also a helpful report to put it in context, I think, a little bit more for all of us. A couple of things. We do have a land divestiture policy, as you mentioned. I've reviewed that in the course of looking over this, and really would believe that it's in need of some revision as well. So I know we have it to work with at the moment, but I would actually put it to my colleagues that I would like to have this reviewed as we go through the process. But also was really interested to know that there's a lot of, we know we've had interest in other pieces of property, but they're not town-owned land. So the fact that there's relatively small target for what would have to happen on town property, I think it would be really helpful for us to have some sort of a mapped out, highlighted display of what is town-owned property within our jurisdiction, to sort of put that in context, because I think there probably are some particular areas where there are, very potentially more readily available pieces of town property that potentially could be ripe for development. So that would be really helpful. Thanks.
My question would be, based on, you said 8 units, we have to supply a piece of land that can handle up to 8 units to match the target that we need, right?
If I'm responding to the chair, do I say through the chair? Okay. Yeah, I'm still working on process. I apologize. Yes and no. So a lot of the targets that are associated with particular initiatives are somewhat malleable. The larger concern is around the total unit count that we're trying to hit for the whole project. And all of those are relatively estimated, so it doesn't have to be 8. If it's 8, great. If it's 20, great. If it's 2, that's not great, but it's acceptable. So.
Because I'll go back to a question I've asked since I was elected. If we ever can talk to Parks Canada directly and get an answer for the building behind us here, in my opinion, that's the perfect place for 8, 10, 12 units of housing. Is the old fire hall. It's been sitting there vacant since 2020 roughly, and it's only falling down or getting worse. We are doing some work to it now finally, but again, it's in the center of town. I know it's in the civic square, so it's supposed to be only for public use, but I've been told at some conferences that they're allowing you to repurpose these buildings more than they ever were, as long as the outside doesn't change so much. But to me, you could actually live there. You can walk to most places. There is a parking lot behind it that we could use. So again, I think that some of our problems, that's only 8 units. It's not solving our 105 units we're short. But again, I think that's something that we should definitely, we need to get an answer sooner rather than later from Parks Canada, because all I've been hearing is, since I started, was nobody can actually give us a yes or no answer whether we could repurpose it or not. So I think that's something we should look at. And the other thing is, it's really hard for me to sit here after being here for 2.5 years and not notice how obvious applying for the HAF was aligned with Blockhouse Hill. And that is a sad thing to think because it was never supposed to be intended for one project. It was supposed to be open for anyone to apply for, but it's not hard to tell by reading the reports how the two correlate with one another. So, that would have been a very easy solution to the 135 units and everything be focused up in that area, but that was never the intent from the government when we got it. So I'd love to see us spread that money around to other areas and other developers if they come forward, because I think that's what it was intended for. Anybody else? Councillor Strong.
Just to add on to that, after hearing from PVSC in the last week or so at a public council meeting, a lot of permits on that hill would have a huge impact on the valuations for Old Town. And I don't know whether we want to go that direction. I'd like to see it spread.
Anybody else? There is a recommendation in front of us. Oh, Councillor Babineau.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to scroll back up to read the recommendation and now I've lost my place. I guess in terms of specific feedback for this one, because I know you've kind of given us two potential options here. I would just like to say that I lean towards the restrictive covenant process, as it does look like that has a shorter timeline, I think, if I'm understanding this correctly. And if time is of the essence, then that would be my preference.
Anybody else want to make a motion that's in front of us? Recommendation. Yeah, it's recommendation, not motion. I'm sorry. Recommendation to go back to council.
Just before you move through the recommendation through your chair, just as a reminder to council that $200,000 of the fund has already been allocated to the street end policy. So there's only 250 or 280,000 or whatever the second amount is that we have. So that's still remaining within our unspent, but you have allocated already 200,000 for the street end policy, just as a reminder.
I am going to move the recommendation that we direct us, the committee of the whole, direct staff to identify one to two town-owned properties for consideration under Initiative 2, town-owned land divestiture with agreements for housing, and to report back to council with findings and options. But I'm also looking at that after having heard the deputy mayor mention that we should revisit the land divestiture policy too. I'd like to see it go back to what it was before the last council had it. It was really equitable, I thought, and anyway, but we can do that separately. Okay, so let's just move with that recommendation and to report back to council with findings and options.
Councillor Babineau. Yeah, okay. So it's moved and seconded to recommend that go back to council. Everybody good with that? Raise your right hand. Okay. We're moving that to council. Then anything else on that issue that we want to clear up before we move on to 9.3? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Just for clarity, with that recommendation, hopefully we would also have an understanding of where all of the other, so if staff don't necessarily recommend, or they may recommend some, but there may be others available, if we could see what all of the options might be as an accompaniment to that recommendation, that would be helpful.
Yes, through the chair, certainly. Yeah.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, Alan. 9.3 is the marketing levy. Kayla.
Perfect. Okay, thanks. So tonight for discussion, we have a draft of the marketing levy bylaw, which council has directed to be effective as of January of next year. So as you'll see in the draft in the report, this bylaw provides the framework for a 3% levy on the purchase price of each stay of every registered short-term accommodation operator in town. And it also sets out a monthly remittance procedure. The bylaw also gives the town authority to verify compliance through records and, if necessary, inspections and audits. As is noted in the report, ahead of drafting the bylaw, we also did targeted engagement with all registered operators. About half of them participated in a survey back in November. And since then, we've continued to provide them updates, including letting them know that it was being discussed tonight. So with that, I'll leave my overview pretty brief. You have the report, you have the draft bylaw. If council has any questions about either the report or the bylaw, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, I always have questions, sorry. Just a couple of questions. One, and I did go over this very quickly, so I may have missed something. There was a lot of material for the meeting this evening. I'm just wondering about why it notes particularly in section 11 that records relating to the marketing levy must be kept separately, or there must be separate records regarding that. And I'm just thinking of the operators, and just wondering if that it seemed extra work and onerous, and I'm just wondering why that was felt to be a necessity for the bylaw.
So really the intent was that was in alignment with the MGA, and perhaps we could word it to be less onerous sounding, but in a purchase sale agreement, it just has to be very clear that this is a market. So when you get your receipt or your invoice at the end of your stay, let's say, here's the price of your room, here's the price of the marketing levy. So it just has to be clearly delineated. It can't be, if your overall purchase was $300, it has to be broken down in a bit of a sense there.
Just, I'm not quite sure if that wasn't what I was referring to, so maybe I misquoted here. Under 11 records so yes, I did note as well that it had to be clearly delineated, I think, for the customer, which I thought was probably fair, so that it's not just lumped in the price. But under records number 11, it says every operator shall keep accurate and complete records sufficient to allow the town to verify accommodation sales, the amount of marketing levy collected, and the amount of marketing levy remitted to the town. And they have to be clearly identifiable from other financial records. And so if they have financial records and they have, that kind of thing kept for some other reason or close to, I just didn't know if, I guess it'd be easier for us to administer. And I guess that may be the sole purpose of that requirement.
Right. I think we could smooth that out so it's a little less onerous. So really the intent there is that we have an absolute backstop if needed. So if there was ever a possibility that perhaps people weren't remitting or weren't remitting the correct amount, we do have the mechanisms in place through the bylaw to say, hey, can we look at your records to see you actually were sold out for the month of August, but your remittance showed you only had maybe 5 bookings for the month of August. So really it's one of those again, we can finesse that, make it a little less onerous. So it's not, they have explicit records, but it's one of those last stop options that we would have if there was failure to comply with the bylaw.
And just further to that with respect to administration and it is a, more work for the town to administer this. I mean, there's obviously benefit to it as a revenue stream, but that it does come with some costs and some requirements of us. And I'm not sure if, I don't know how, if we're at the point where we know how that will get administered, through this building, particularly if we're at the point where we understand that fully or not.
Right, yeah. So in collaboration with creating the draft, and as we know, this has been on council's list for a while, we have had meetings with community development and finance of what they look like. So really making sure finance are the people who, in most simple terms, they take the money each month. We'll keep a list of the records. So right now we have 49 registered operators, and then there is like a little bit of hand holding with it. So in terms of whether it's someone in this position or community development, will have someone that works with finance to issue notices to say, hey, we notice you haven't issued your remittance. And then it would just require like a boilerplate email of the reminders and we'd go from there. But in speaking with finance and with community development, because we have a smaller volume, whereas Chester has over 200 or something like that, we don't think it's going to be administratively. There will be some growing pains as we adjust to it. But all of this has been prepared in collaboration with finance and community development.
Anybody else? Councillor Daphne?
I've always said, and when I campaigned too, that, and this may sound harsh, but I'm tired that people, and I use that term, people, tourists, whatever, why are you coming to town? You're coming to town because Lunenburg is so special for many different reasons. The waterfront, the heritage, the people, the architecture, whatever. And we give. Well, I think Lunenburg needs to take back some stuff. I've felt for a long time that people use the town, and why aren't we capitalizing on what we have? I mean, look at us. I mean, we are, and I'm sorry for the rest of Canada, but we are the place to be. We are. And I noticed, Kayla, here it says, while the town cannot impose a broader tourism tax, it may charge user fees for the use of municipal assets and services. Common examples include designated tour bus parking or fees for the use of municipal facilities, public spaces for events, where charges are based on service use, space, cost recovery, rather than tourism activity itself. For me, I would like to explore that a little bit more, and learn a little bit more. And maybe it's not worth our while. I don't know, but we got to look out for Lunenburg, and we're giving a lot of what she has away for free. And to me, that's not right.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Babineau?
I mean, I'm happy with the draft levy as it is. If there's some smoothing out that can be done with some of the language, that would be great. But I do think as we go along, it's very important that we continue to engage with the operators, the ones who are going to be also sharing this burden, and make sure that they're very involved in the conversation about how this is spent. And I believe this has kind of come up at a previous meeting where we ended up pushing out the start date. That is very important. And I would also agree with Debbie that there's a wider conversation to have here about other ways in which other operators or the tourists can contribute. And those funds, of course, would not have the same restrictions on them as to how you can spend them, which would be great, because I'd love to see that go towards infrastructure, since that's what they tend to hit the hardest. So that's all. Thanks.
Anybody else? I'd just like to highlight a few things that came from the report. One, there's been a lot of discussion around the community about expanding it to other businesses. And unfortunately, at this time, the marketing levy is only allowed on short-term accommodations. That's not our rule. That's the government's rule. It's under the MGA. And in fact, they've only allowed us to even do this, recently. In saying that, they've also put some rigid guidelines, and they are better than they were when they first came out with the legislation. They've expanded it a bit, but there's 7 things that you can do with the money, and they're all listed in the report. I mean, it's pretty simple. Marketing and advertising campaigns to promote the town as a tourism destination. Destination branding, visitor guides and promotional materials. Digital marketing, website content, and social media promotion related to tourism. Support for festival events or initiatives that attract visitors and promote tourism. Research, data collection, or studies related to tourism promotion and visitor trends. Visitor information services and wayfinding related to tourism, and grants or contributions to organizations formed to promote tourism, whether nonprofit or otherwise, as determined by council. Those are the 7 things you can actually spend that marketing money on at this time. I did attend a tie-ins thing on Thursday last week, and there has been some talk about many of the municipal folks that were there and others feel that should be expanded somewhat to other things. The example we use from our community is, for example, it costs the taxpayers of town about $25,000 a year to maintain our public washroom. That public washroom was only put there in the late 90s after we became a UNESCO designation, after we became a destination. We probably wouldn't have built that public washroom at the end of Blue Nose Drive if we didn't become a tourism destination. So yes, locals use that washroom, but primarily it's tourists visiting the community. So we felt that should be expanded, and tie-ins did not disagree. In fact, to be honest with you, tie-ins didn't know you weren't allowed to spend it on that. So they were going to talk to some people within the province and take that back. And some other communities had some other issues with this as well. But I think that the other thing is, I do like the fact in the report that if we implement this, we're going to, number one, not collect it for till next year, number one, and number two, we're going to take the money and put it aside for the first year until we actually know how much it is, because we really have no idea. And at that time, then decide what we're going to do. I think it'd be important, once we know what we're dealing with, is forming some type of a committee, whether it's some members of the Board of Trade, people from town, and some accommodation owners, people that are actually collecting the money, to have some input on how we spend the money. I think that's very important. I think if you're collecting it and you're the one, bearing the brunt, you should have some say in how we spend it. So again, those are things that I'd like to see. And lastly, we started talking about a tourism levy when I was in council in 2006, which was slightly ahead of the tourism levy time, to be quite honest. We would have been ahead of the curve. Well, now we're probably one of the only communities in North America, for sure, that doesn't have a tourism levy or a marketing levy. So I think it's time to move to the next phase, which is to the first reading. And if we move to the first reading, at that time, then people can come up and give suggestions, comments, have their say, and we might tweak it at that time again. By no means does us moving this forward to the first reading tonight mean that this document as it's written is passing. It just means it's going to the next process so people can actually have a say, because the MGA also limits us on how we can participate with the public on these things. So there is a recommendation in front of us. Is someone prepared to move that recommendation? You have to read it.
Okay, I think that this committee of the whole, I'd like to move that this committee of the whole refer the marketing levy bylaw to a regular council meeting for first reading.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Fullerton. Any further question or discussion on it? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried unanimous. Thank you very much. Now we're on to 9.4 parking meter bylaw updates. And Kayla?
Thank you. So as we get ready to introduce our new hotspot paid parking app, we've identified that the parking meter bylaw should be updated to at least modernize the language, which is really focused on coin payments at physical meters. So preparing this update, we're asking council if there are any other changes they'd like to see to the parking meter bylaw as we do these kind of housekeeping language updates. So as noted in the report, some of the items council might want to consider and deliberate on is perhaps looking at meter time limits, which are restricted right now to 2 and 4 hours. Perhaps looking at permits, like a daily, monthly, or annual option. Looking at the veterans exemption. So right now in practice, we have volunteer firefighters are also exempt, but it's not written into the bylaw. So great opportunity if council wants to solidify that, put it in there, and maybe look at expanding that if council desires. And then we also have consideration for increasing parking fines and looking at our free parking. So right now we have the month of December and then the hours of where parking is free. So these are all just very like housekeeping up to council as we review the bylaw. Good opportunity for you all to take a look and see if there's anything you want to update and modernize. So again, with that, I'll leave it to you folks to discuss. And Shania is also here as our boots on the ground parking enforcement person. So we're both happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kayla. Any questions, comments? Nobody? Oh, go ahead.
One thing that came to mind for me was if it was possible to consider an option for people, just talking about the marketing levy for short-term accommodations. There's a number of accommodations that are in the downtown core that, may be negatively impacted by available parking, or if there's a time limit and they have to go out and update their parking every 2 to 4 hours or something. So if it's a consideration, if we could, have, say, a 1 or 2 day pass for people who are staying in accommodations that don't offer parking in the downtown core.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Babineau.
So in general, I almost wonder if we shouldn't keep some of this similar for a while until we've worked out the inevitable kinks with hotspot. But in saying that, actually, one of the things that I think we should maybe explore is having passes, like daily, weekly, monthly, that kind of thing, which I think would kind of dovetail with what Councillor Grieg just said about that's maybe something that people who are staying at accommodations would be interested in. But yeah, I just feel like there's going to be some headaches with hotspot, and maybe we wait to make any further changes until we know what those are and how hard they are to overcome. But that's just me. I do think eventually, once we figure out if the coin-based system can also have rate changes done, because I think I read in here somewhere that's still going to be explored, that we should revisit the rates. And it would maybe be helpful to know what some of the other sort of municipalities are charging. So, just me.
Councillor Strong.
I agree with both of my friends on the other side of the room. One thing I think we should really be mindful of is that that word that pops up all the time about accessibility. And we have a post office right in the middle of parking heaven or hell, I guess, in this case. And would it be possible to have a spot for seniors, not including me, to be able to park for 5 minutes? Because I know many of them are traveling from the other part of the 4 square kilometers to get their mail. Like just even a 5-minute spot for accessibility to the mail boxes. Aside from that, and I just would hate to see it get into a situation where people can't go to their post office box because everybody has meters or everybody has hotspot going and passes. And I see that happening in Halifax quite a bit, by the way. There's less, it's like the worst parking in North America is in Halifax right at the moment. But yeah, recognize that this is a very small town, but the population is heavy in the senior category, and I think that can affect accessibility. That's just my top of head right now. I'm starting to fade with all this reading that I did.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
I'm just weighing in with further points for consideration with regards to the comments made by my colleagues with for permitting or longer time passes. I do worry about that and the impact of that on our downtown core, which is very limited. And I think that if that's a consideration we want to give, then I think we have to look at where designating places that are outside of the core, just because I think it would fill up very quickly, and it would be really, it would negatively impact flow. And to the point of I've lived through a lot of angst and discussion and concern about parking meters and paid parking and that sort of thing over many, many years. And it continues to be my belief that the purpose of the parking meters, although they do provide us with a revenue stream that is healthier than I used to think it might be, I remember being ticketed and writing to town hall and asking, just how much money do you generate from this when you're charging me for running into Kinley's? Anyway, but it really is for traffic flow and to try to provide it, to try to accommodate for business to take place in our downtown core and to try to ensure people aren't hogging it. And if we're giving out passes to everyone who's a resident of an upstairs apartment or who's a short-term renter, then we're not fulfilling that requirement of or that, I think, purpose of the meters in the first place. So I just throw that out there for consideration. And but also there may be opportunities elsewhere that we could look to do some of those things. And I would, what was I going to say? Also, talking about the fines. Although our parking meter, the fees for parking have gone up a little bit over time. It's probably still a good deal, but I think certainly the fines are a very good deal. And they may sort of, not be a disincentive for taking a parking spot for a whole day, and just, paying the fine, considering what you may pay in other jurisdictions for that same privilege. So anyway, that might be something worth looking at, and perhaps increasing the cost of fines for hogging spaces in the downtown core.
Councillor Babineau?
I just realized I didn't really weigh in on the veterans parking and the firefighters parking. I think if it's something that we've been doing in practice for any length of time, we should just probably formalize that. That would be my preference.
Yeah, that's good to put in there. Make sure if we're doing it right. I guess my comments are sort of mixed. They're all over the place. Number one is meters have gone up about 200% since I can remember parking downtown, which I'm not saying they're too much, but it's gone up to $2 an hour. I can remember when it was 25 cents or 50 cents an hour, but our tickets are still $10. So if you can do math at all, if you're going to park all day downtown, you're better off taking your chances of getting a ticket and paying the $10 than you are keep running out and feeding the meter every 2 hours, because that would be $16 if you work an 8-hour day. So I think if we're going to keep raising our meter prices, we need to raise our ticket prices, because it just doesn't make any sense not to. Like I said, I was surprised the last 2 or 3 times we raised our meter prices, the tickets stayed the same. And I know that because I've gotten some tickets. So I think that, $20 would be more realistic on a parking ticket than 10 would be my thought, number one. Number two, I do have concern about permits. I know they could be beneficial to residents, or something that we could do around the post office area and Kinley's to run in and run out, like a quick stop, but permits are going to be hard to enforce, and I can see permits backfiring, especially down in the Montague Street area where that's where all the restaurant action is, that has tons of employees. That's where you hear most of your complaining about parking and meters, is the employees of those facilities. So if the 8 or 9 or 10 restaurants that we have on Montague Street, the owners all decide to buy permits for all their staff, there'll be no place to park in the downtown core for anybody else but the staff of the facilities. So that concerns me. That's always concerned me. The problem with parking isn't the lack of parking, isn't that we have too much parking, it's the lack of. And I think permits will hurt that. I also think that, honestly, if you look at the big picture, and I'm as bad as anybody else, but you can always find parking up in this area. So most people that are working in the downtown core are more than capable of walking 2 blocks. They do it if they went to the city. They do it if they went to Costco. Before they even get in the door, sometimes you're parking like by the academy to go to the post office. When you're parking in the Costco parking lot, no one complains. They're just happy they got a parking place, right? So again, I think permits, you got to be really, really careful, because we could hurt ourselves more than help ourselves with that. again, I have no problem with from, say, maybe a couple spots from Kinley's to the post office, having like 5-minute spots or whatever for seniors or locals, that locals get a pass or something that they get to go get their mail, right? Some communities have these local passes, but you get to go in and run in and grab your mail and come out. It's not to go all around town or go for a meal. So again, this is it's a lot harder situation to deal with in a community that's a destination community like ours is for 4 months of the year. Because if we do anything to make it easier to park in places and less expensive, I think we're going to run into some issues. I think the fine still being $10 has started some issues already because people have clued in. They've pretty basic math, right? So people have already started doing that. So again, I think that we're very fortunate that we, about a year and a half or so ago or 2 years ago, we hired a bylaw officer because I think it was ridiculous. For a number of years, we didn't actually have a real bylaw officer. The bylaw officer worked, I think, 4 hours a week. So if you saw them out on a Tuesday afternoon from 1 to 5, you knew you were good until the following week. So again, I think it's great to have a full-time bylaw officer. So again, that's where I'd like to see us go with this. But it is a difficult one because I do know some locals that have approached me about the post office area, for example. So if that's something staff can maybe look to see what some other communities do, it might be, because we're not the only community with meters. So that's my 2 cents worth. Anybody else? Do you have enough information? All right. Okay, you'll do a quick recap.
All right, so just to make sure we've got council's direction clear. So we're going to look at possibly permitting. Maybe that's like a day pass. Maybe that will resolve some of the friction of like tourism, because we have heard complaints before. If you're going on a boat tour or something, that time limit exceeds and you come back to a ticket, but you were out on a boat. So perhaps maybe a monthly and annual doesn't work. We did look in our research of this for residential permit passing. That's quite popular in other tourism communities, especially in like Alberta. However, we are just limited in parking. So while that's a really nice gesture and works in some communities, they just have more capacity. Anyway, sorry. Also looking at possibly accessible or local short-term parking. In this report, we identified that if there were maxed out time limits, that location that you're all talking about, right at the post office, kind of the right there, would still be limited parking timelines, because that's where we want the turnover, because we do recognize that's where our residents are going. Just adding, we do have the veterans, but in practice, we're doing firefighters as well. So let's just formalize that. Take a look at fees, possibly a comfort with $20. Our bylaw says 15, but our ticket books say 10.
Yeah, that's why I was confused when I read the report.
So that is what we have to look at. Again, right now with upping the parking meter fees, we still don't really know if that's even possible to do it all across the board. And maybe, as you've all kind of the consensus there, let's work on introducing the hotspot app and getting people, and not necessarily it costs more and now you have to use your cell phone all the time. So if I missed anything, please let me know, but I think we have the direction to start cleaning up this bylaw.
I have a quick question. Do retired police officers or police officers have special plates like firefighters have?
No, unfortunately, they don't have any identifying plates.
Okay, I just thought if they did, it would be nice to include them on the list, but if they don't, it would be hard to tell who they were. So, okay, no, I'm great with those changes and updates, and we'll look forward to it coming back to council. So we'll move on to 9.5 is the hack and trolley bylaw. So I have Kayla and Shania.
So same thing here, looking for council to take a look at our draft. So very much like the marketing levy bylaw, we have an updated, no, we've rebranded it, called the tour vehicle and horse-drawn vehicle bylaw. Because honestly, before working here, I didn't know what a hack was. So as is noted on council's motion action list, council was hoping to modernize this bylaw a little bit by really clarifying those parameters around animal welfare. So which the draft bylaw attached to your agenda does, mainly in sections 22 to 26 of the proposed updated bylaw. Again, very much like the conversation we just had on parking meters. While we're here looking at a certain aspect of this bylaw, it's also a good time. This bylaw, I think, hasn't been really rewritten since 2002. So just a good opportunity to maybe modernize the language a little bit and do a bit of housekeeping. One of those being the addition of a Schedule A and B, which would have the fees and license limits. And really, that's just to keep it all contained within the one document. Right now, council has the ability through resolution to set these, which they have, but then when we go looking for them, we have to look in the minutes. So really, this is just about keeping it all in the same place. There's a table in the chart that kind of shows those housekeeping changes are in the report. So that is it. Again, I'll keep it brief. And if council wants to go through the report or the bylaw, both Shania and I are here to answer your questions.
Thank you. Councillor Strong.
Well, we've come a long way from that hot day. We sat downstairs and with the operators, and I'm glad to see that their comments were taken into consideration in preparing this. And I I don't think I've ever seen such a good product. So, and coming from me, I always have like 25 questions in your office about it, but this is in response to one applicant in the town. Like, we're not going to see more people coming in to operate pack and trolleys or whatever you want to call it.
So really, this is what's interesting about this bylaw. As it currently stands, yes, we only have one person. We wouldn't want to limit ourselves in terms of this is a bylaw just for one. That's what's make this a little bit tricky when we're talking about it's very specific to this one business because there are only game in town. However, if another person did want to come and start a hack and trolley, right now, as we've introduced, that we would limit. So the current operator has 3 carriages that they operate with 2 horses. We bumped that up, proposed that it could be 4. If council wanted to cut that down to 3, they could. But if someone else were to come and apply for a horse-drawn carriage permit, that would then, through this bylaw, the draft that we have here, it would then be up to council to try to look at like the saturation, so there would be a mechanism to apply that equitably, like not so there would be a monopoly for one company, but right now we're not there, but the bylaw allows for how we would deal with more people. Same with Trolley was how we identified it, but that's really a tour bus that would go around and say, here's town hall in the same sense. So we don't have that currently. But if we did, that would be another consideration of how we issue those licenses.
And then I guess I had another question about the horse manure. I know everybody likes that topic in the town, but we're regulating this because there's a public health issue, or is it some other reason?
So really, this just comes to, nuisance. And so making sure that they have I'm really sorry, I don't know the technical term, the bag that catches the droppings, the diaper, the horse diaper. So making sure that's a part of it. And if it wasn't, if accidents happen, as we see, the diaper falls off, it's too full, I'm not quite sure, then it would be up to the operator to get a staff member there very quickly, recognizing that if they are choosing to operate, these are wild animals, but it is their responsibility to make sure they have their diapers in place and that if something were to happen, they would go and clean it up.
One thing I didn't see in there in that cleanliness and nuisance prevention is how we deal with it if it's not being taken care of by the operator.
Right. So again, a lot of our bylaws are complaint-based and compliance and education. So that's where we're working with Shania. If we received a complaint that they were not properly diapered, then Shania would go and investigate, and it's tied to, their licensing. So that's the biggest mechanism we have to say, if you are no longer compliant, we will revoke or suspend your license until you remedy this. So again, their intent is this is their business and they would like to run and operate. So we hope that that is enough to keep them compliant.
Really like insurance, as you know. So I like to see that we would be indemnified through their insurance. That's important for the town, for townspeople to know too. And that is 2 million the actual limit?
Through you, Chair, 2 million is the recommended level that most businesses, organizations, nonprofits are being asked to provide now. Beyond that, it would be up to the business themselves if they wish to provide further, but it went from 1 million to 2 million over the last few years, and that's what's been established as the new threshold.
I'm sure there will be other questions from my friends around the room, but that's it for me.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Greek.
Under section 24, extreme weather and environmental conditions, I'm wondering if it might be something to consider to list, potential ranges that horse-drawn vehicles shouldn't be allowed to safely operate in, whether it be 40 degrees or 100 kilometers an hour or something like that. Just as it was written a bit now, or as it was written right now, it was just a bit debatable to me what extreme weather conditions would be.
So that was and again, if it's the will of council, we can put that in. That was a conversation we had when drafting it. So rather than putting in very rigid, so say if it was 32 degrees, we all recognize weather can fluctuate. It might be a little bit chillier here. So, and then that could also make the threshold of the complaint. So if it's observable that even though it's 27 degrees, but it's quite muggy and the horse hasn't had any shade, it's been quite sunny, they're fatigued, and there's those observables, it gives more of like a common sense of the bylaw enforcement officer to say, like, again, we're not veterinarians, we're not trained, but we can say it's been very, very sunny. This horse looks like it's thirsty. We've had complaints. So it gives us, like, rather than locking it in on those more rigid, but if council wants to, I think this just gives a little bit more leniency and leeway for the bylaw enforcement officer to step in rather than a hard number on the thermostat.
I just hope that the way it's written, whether it's this way or we put a hard number in, that when we get complaints by people, that we have a mechanism to actually, if we feel we need to do anything, we can, because previously we couldn't do a whole lot. So, I mean, yes, I think the operators have answered every question we've asked them. We've met with them, but I mean, there were days out there where it was almost too hot for anybody to work, even inside in air conditioning in some places, and they were still operating. So sometimes common sense isn't that common. So we should make sure we have the ability, if we feel that this just is unsafe, to do something about it.
Yeah, so I'm pretty confident in what's written here, that if I did get a complaint, I could go out and deal with this effectively. Using the previous bylaw, it was outdated, yes, but it did work really well over the past season. In dealing with that complaint, we were able to work with them and get this resolved fairly quickly. And they worked with us, and it went well. So very confident in what's written here, that I can go out and address these complaints.
Thank you. Because I mean, I love seeing the horse and buggy go downtown. I think it's a big asset to the community. And basically, the way the bylaw is written, we have two choices. You make a bylaw like this, or some modifications maybe, or you don't allow it altogether. Some communities have went that route. I definitely would never suggest that or think we should look at that route. Some people in the community, I think, feel that way, but I'm not one of them. And I think that this is a business that's viable. It's, people come here to take the horse and trolley ride. So I think it's an important asset to our especially the 3 or 4 months of the season. And I've been in other communities that have them and have taken them, and they're a lovely thing to do when you're a tourist, right? It's great. So, Deputy Mayor.
Just add a kind of a different slant, I think, on the parameters around what's permissible and what's, problematic, and just a little worried, not that Shania is not capable of making judgments, but just of us as a community and a member of our staff having the responsibility to make a declaration that this is too hot for your animal, or it's okay, it's not too hot, you should be fine, there's a nice breeze. I wonder if there aren't other bodies that are as more professional organizations or institutions or some kind of references that we point to. I know when we spoke with the operator last year, that she had access to some sort of data that she could point to and that she made use of to make those determinations in addition to just knowing her animals and understanding the circumstances.
Through you, Chair, even talking with them last year, they actually used a care guide that monitored the horses, monitored the weather. They used several different weather channels as well to see what was coming, what were the conditions, and to ensure that the horses themselves were okay. And on every tour, they would actually be checking over the horses. As a business that is in the process, like as a farm business and as a horse and trolley business, they're not willing to injure their animals because they are the livelihood. And based on our understanding and talking with veterinarians, talking with the province and the agricultural department, the thresholds that they're setting are very reasonable, and even their safe practices for operation were impressive when we looked at them. And then when the province and the private veterinarian looked at them, they were aligning with the direction that it's going. And we still have the mechanism that if we want them to stop, we can tell them to stop. And if we feel that the horses are unsafe, we can call for the veterinarian like we did last year. So I think we do have steps in place, and we would scale it up in levels from working with bylaw enforcement up through staff. And if we wanted, we would have that ability to declare or stop at that point.
Councillor Strong?
I think the plan actually, the under 22.2, they have to, at a minimum, address procedures for managing extreme weather or environmental risks. And maybe that, that in itself is okay, but it gives us the ability to require amendments if we start to see like animal abuse or something like that happening. But maybe the plan at a minimum to address, have those procedures set out in D and approved by a veterinarian.
Yes, yeah, so I'm glad you pointed out section 22 because that is new, that just making sure that if a business is going to operate, that they have these standard operating procedures and we know that they have a plan. What are you going to do in an emergency? What are you going to do in extreme weather? But actually, I noticed when I was reviewing today, a previous provision of the current bylaw is that a veterinarian would sign off to say that these are ready to work. So you show up out of the blue and you have your horses. We would want to know that a veterinarian has already certified that, yes, these are in good condition. So that was an oversight, not in this new one, but it's in the current one. And I'd suggest we bring that over. So it could be a part of the plan. But again, having that veterinary sign off at the beginning of the application process.
Anybody else? Okay, there's a recommendation there in front of us. Councillor Daphne.
I just want to have a little fun with Kayla for a minute. Because you threw yourself into the hay on this one, could I, if I wanted to, bring in Maple and Leaf, my two oxen, and have the same sort of business?
Well, Councillor Daphne, you'd have to apply for a license.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Deputy.
This is a little bit outside of what we had been regulating in the past, but it had been previously discussed with respect to tour operators and people giving tours in our community. And that is with respect to the commentary that is provided and whether or not there's accuracy in the information that's provided to our visitors. And I know in some other jurisdictions that there is an approval process for that as well. And I'm just looking around to see if there's either appetite and mechanisms to give some sort of basic overview to ensure that information is correct and that they're meeting a certain standard that befits the community.
Anybody else? Somebody want to move that recommendation?
Recommend Rachel's, right? about the tourism consistency in language or?
Or sorry,
Recommendation in front of us.
Okay,
just to get the directions.
I'm going to recommend that the committee of the whole, all of us in this room, refer the proposed tour vehicle and horse-drawn vehicle bylaw to a regular meeting of council for the first reading.
Moved, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Babineau. Any further discussion or question? All those in,
Just for the clarification, when we bring this back, it sounds like there was general comfort with most of it. We'll add that clause about the veterinary checkup for the initial. And then perhaps there is it's a bit more vague of a clause in there about non-misleading and compliant to the noise bylaw. The one in the current one was a bit more rigid in terms of, I think there was a script that would be approved by council, but perhaps council has an appetite in seeing some more parameters, maybe a happy medium from, or if council would like to see scripts approved in terms of the information.
Deputy Mayor?
I'm just, my thought on that is that script seems a bit, intense. But basic, if they're talking about the history of buildings or, particular properties on the route that they're referencing or whatever, just, what content, we wouldn't expect them to, be verbatim necessarily in what's said. And I know they like to inject a little humor and, and that sort of thing is, in the interests of being entertaining is great. And I wouldn't want to curb that, but we have had, and not necessarily the operators, the current operators at all, but even we have tour operators who come in from elsewhere. And frankly, I've heard in some of the information they're providing and it's brutal. It isn't accurate. And I think that's a disservice to the community. So I guess some sort of just kind of basic understanding of what's being communicated and that it's, in the realm of right.
Okay, so there's a recommendation moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried unanimous. Number 9.6, noise bylaw annual review. Shania.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In June 2025, Council adopted the updated noise bylaw, which requires an annual review. My report, included in your information package, outlines the bylaw's performance since implementation. Since the bylaw came into effect, we have seen a significant reduction in noise complaints. This is largely because the bylaw is clearer and people better understand what is and is not permitted. From an enforcement perspective, I found the bylaw to be straightforward, practical, and easy to apply. To date, the updated bylaw has only been required for formal enforcement on one occasion for a residential noise complaint. That matter was resolved quickly and effectively using the new provisions. There is one noise complaint still under review, but it involves a liquor license establishment. After speaking with the province, it was confirmed that these complaints fall under AGFT, Nova Scotia Alcohol, Gaming, Fuel, and Tobacco. AGFT has advised that they are taking responsibility for this complaint and have the authority to investigate and impose conditions on a license, such as limits on entertainment or sound, to bring the business into compliance if necessary. All complaints regarding a licensed establishment will now be investigated and handled by AGFT, who will work with the town, complainant, and establishment to have the matter resolved. This approach provides clear accountability, stronger compliance tools, and a more efficient resolution process for this category of noise complaints. Overall, I am satisfied that the noise bylaw is working as intended and has provided a clear and effective tool for managing noise issues in the town. If council has any questions, concerns, or suggestions for changes to our current noise bylaw, I'm happy to discuss and take direction.
Thank you. Any questions for Shania? Councillor Strong?
I'm the queen of receiving noise complaints on council. And in particular with one venue, that if the noise was made inside, it wouldn't bother anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But on Friday night and Saturday night, when I was on my vacation, for example, my phone was blowing up with people on Facebook complaining about music traveling across the water to them. And I have to admit, having sat through a few of those nights myself in town, it is a noise. that we wouldn't be, it is a nuisance. I'd characterize it as, because it's not, if it was inside, it would not be an issue, but it's outside. So it's in everybody's backyard, basically, or whichever way the wind is going. What am I to do when people complain to me? Because I can't solve this issue. Is there a number that they call? Is there a process that they follow to get attention from staff and to have some kind of remedy fashion for them?
Yes, absolutely. So all complaints can come straight to me, which then, if it is against a licensed establishment, I will then give to the AGFT, who will do their investigation. They'll work alongside with me as well. I'll be kept up to date on these. One current file is in their possession. So they have all previous complaints from this, and they'll investigate and keep me updated.
And is an AGFT officer local, or do they have to come from Halifax?
So they have a local officer coming to Bridgewater. I'm not sure the start date on that, but should be here for the season.
So I guess it's an information report, and maybe what we need is more information to the public on how they are to make a complaint. Because it just seems to stop with me. I send it off to staff and I don't hear back. And nor would I really expect to hear back. I just expect something to happen, so.
Through you, Chair, our goal is to have a better education campaign for the public as well as for council. So when you do receive these complaints, you need to direct them immediately to our bylaw enforcement, whether it's text, phone, or email. We cannot respond the next day in these situations. We actually have to have our officer going in and checking this out within that scope. So that, very similar to how we were doing the electrical utility, when we're directing public, please focus to this email, please focus to this phone number. Same kind of concept. We're going to work on communication with that. And that is hoped to be repeated both through council, staff, and to the public. Our hope is also to do hopefully a bit of an education campaign into the spring. Our hope and goal is to work with the province to maybe even have an education session for residents, businesses, so they're aware of these changes, that further enforcement of noise complaints as it comes to restaurants, bars, entertainment centers, breweries. These things will be focused more by the province, but will still be completely liaised with town staff. So we're hoping to strengthen that avenue, as well as that the province is willing to work with businesses to look at how an entertainment center or restaurant or business can operate to their patrons and not to the whole town.
For the benefit of everybody in the room, I had said that would be a beautiful thing. I think we better get on that education piece sooner than later, because I have a lot of patience for complaints, but if they're only going to complain to me, it doesn't seem to be an effective remedy. So, or there doesn't seem to be an effective remedy available to them, because I'm just a counselor. So again, I think last meeting I talked about maybe getting a magnet for how to behave in a fire. Maybe we need a magnet for when do you call your bylaw officer?
Deputy Mayor.
It's just a question for staff and with respect to follow up on how to contact. There used to be something on our website. Is that back up and running or not yet? And is there a direct number to be used instead, or how do we handle that?
That has since been removed from the site just because it stopped working properly. I wasn't receiving those complaints, which was causing issue. But I have a cell number that they can use to contact. I'm on call at all times. So like the CAO said, if I get a complaint that evening, I would love to go out and actually hear the noise for myself. So instead of just listening from my back deck, hoping for a complaint, I would like to hear them the night of when they're happening so I can go out and just deal with it.
And through you, Chair, we'll work with the communications department to put together both social media posts and make updates to the website for contact information. And perhaps a magnet.
So what I'd like to see us do, number one, is education. Communication is very important. Get that number out so people can call. But the more importantly, quite frankly, to me, this is now in AGFT's hands, so we have to have them here on the spot on a Friday or Saturday night, and they do what they do. I'm not sure what that would be, but the one thing I would hate to see them do, I mean, we're talking about a business. We all know what we're talking about, unless you live in a bubble. That's a business that's fairly new. It brings thousands of people to this community throughout the summer season. They have very high level entertainment. It's almost every business in town benefits from the type and the quality of entertainment they bring to this community. People come and they stay. They come on a Friday and stay to Sunday because there's back-to-back performers that are, bigger names. So again, and the thing is, I know it would suck to live right across from it because everything travels across the water, and I don't know how to prevent that. But I think that we should sit down with the owners as well, at least one more time this spring to see if there's ways they can turn the speakers, put something up to baff a little bit, or do something to prevent it from spreading all over town. But it's going to be hard where the location is. But again, it's a business that is probably only viable within the community if they have the type of entertainment they have. And I've looked at their schedule because other years they have all of a sudden out of the blue had something on a Thursday night or something out of the blue on a Sunday night when Monday's a holiday. At this point, all their entertainment is Friday, Saturday night. So maybe that's something else we want to talk to the owners themselves of, because as far as I'm concerned, if it's only on Friday and Saturday nights and they stop playing at 10 to 10 at night, then it's really not a big deal, quite frankly, right? I think the big deal was when they played sometimes 4 nights in 1 week and people got tired. And it's funny because some of the people that complain to me on the street or even by email have been to many functions at that location. So it's a band they really like, it's great. But when it's music they don't like, it's terrible. So we aren't the music police either, right? So again, we have to be careful what we do here, because you don't want to impede their ability to survive. And that's what I'm scared we do if we put too stringent rules in. And again, we have to, all of us around this table, when we get complaints, weigh how many complaints we get on certain issues. And we're never going to please 100% of the citizens on anything we do. So we have to remember that too. So I'm happy with the way the bylaw is written. I'm happy that, AGFT is basically taking it under their purview and going to look into it. But again, maybe we can meet with them and just talk to them about sometimes when they had multiple, events, they kept a band there for 2 nights, there's supposed to be 1. We can talk to the owners. I just want to see us to come to something that we can all live with, because I'd hate to see us put anything in place that's a detriment to that business surviving. So.
Through you, Chair, just within that comment there, our goal is always compliance with under the bylaw and understanding it's a balance between both residents' enjoyment of the time, but also business continuity. So that's always our goal, is just compliance. And again, education, communication, warn, beyond, and then we work within that scope. So, and I think that's been an effective model that we've been using to this point.
This would not be an issue if it was a closed venue. And that's I guess the point, that it's only been around for 3 years or 4 years maybe now. The sales are based on the backdrop of the town of Lunenburg, where there are 2,500 residents, and I think that balance is pretty important. If we had 5 or 6 venues that popped up to do this with the view of the golf course, for example, we'd be in a very different world. So I do think we have to be mindful that they are getting their entertainment because of the backdrop of Lunenburg and what taxpayers, both commercial and residential, contribute to the town. The residents need to be reminded that complaining on Facebook is not going to be effective. It's just going to get my nerves going on a weekend, and everybody's going to be racing back and forth with, "Oh, it's terrible," but it's not going to have any impact.
I've stopped following a lot of folks on Facebook because of just that. It would just wind me up and I can't do anything about it, and it serves no purpose. So I really don't care if 500 people are on Facebook complaining about something in town, to be quite frank. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't bother me anymore. And it really is irrelevant to the decision. It should be irrelevant to the decisions we make around this table. If you can't come to this meeting or a public council meeting and speak to us or write us like a well-written letter or a letter that's not derogatory, and you have to do all your communicating through social media, then to me, that doesn't count. Social media and raving on Facebook I've never lost 1 minute of sleep for something that has been said on social media. And I don't care who hears that. I haven't, because most of the time they're saying it on Facebook because they would never say it to our faces. So again, keyboard warriors are a wonderful thing. So back to the noise bylaw. Are we okay to move on, and we'll come back with some changes or as is, or look at some other things? It's a community. We got the communication, and we will try to set up a meeting with the owners.
And just to touch on that as well, AGFT, they are going to meet with them prior to the season start as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thanks to staff for taking the time to look into this. So now next is REMO Advisory Committee budget proposal for council discussion. So you have the report here in front of you. It's just pre-approval for the budget for this year. So any comments? Deputy Mayor.
I just want to point out to everyone, as one of the representatives on REMO for the town of Lunenburg, that the process for budget approval was recently changed. And so this is really a preliminary opportunity for our councils to, all the partner councils, to weigh in on what's being proposed, and if there are concerns or major questions or any questions at all, that this is, your first chance to weigh in and to ask and to be satisfied that our funds are being expended as we would hope they would be. So we have discussed this already at a REMO meeting, and quite comfortable with what's there, but welcome our colleagues to question anything that's there.
There is a new formula, as the deputy mayor said, and just short and cut is that basically last year under the formula, we would be paying 23,000 or so. This year under the new formula, last year's budget would have been 35,000, 36,000. So we are paying a bit more, but they did a new formula that's very equitable to everybody. And all I can say is for the services that are out there that they can provide, if we need them, this is one of these insurance things. Hopefully we'll never need REMO within our 4 square kilometers, but we are members and we do participate in events that go on outside our town. That's what regional REMO means. But for 35 or whatever it will be, 40,000 when it's all said and done, we could never do this on our own and have the assets and the experience and the professional people behind us that we have for that amount of money. So to me, it's really, we can discuss it to death, but we should be partners and pay our share.
Through you, Chair, just as a comment within this, the scope of the funds that are spent here, there's a good portion spent on training, and we're training, I think it's 12 of our staff members alone in REMO and emergency preparedness, and actually doing cross-training. The hope and goal is that each staff member will know 2 positions within REMO so that we can alternate, we can always have fresh bodies, and this goes across. The goal is within a 24-hour period, we're probably looking at 8 shifts, and we're looking at like 36 people participating across all the municipalities that are within Lunenburg County. So it makes us more viable and sustainable as it comes on a regional level. But in an emergency scenario for Lunenburg, we can rely on our partners, but also the fact that our staff are going to be well trained within the verses of emergency management to be prepared for the best for our community. So it's a really good model that's been put forward.
Yeah, from sitting on the committee with the deputy mayor and the CAO, I'm very impressed with the amount of training they actually do for senior staff and for others. And again, this is basically just a real good insurance policy to have in case the day ever comes that we need them, cross our fingers and everything else that we won't. But again, I think that what they're asking here tonight is very reasonable. So does anybody else have any questions? Councillor Babineau?
I don't know, maybe this is a silly one, but I don't sit on REMO. So what's shelter generator?
Okay, that's a good question, actually. Very good question. So they've been donated a couple large generators that would cost quite a bit of money. So they're trying to find 2 locations that are somewhat because we do Chester down to Bridgewater. So the 2 areas they're looking at is an area outside of Chester and an area in the Bridgewater area right now to see how easy they can be hooked up and if they're sufficient or not. Because, a free generator is great, but if it can't be used for the electrical parts or whatever, so they're trying to come back with prices on that. But it's something we've talked about for a while. We'll still have our warming center. We'll still have what we have. And maybe down the road, we will look at doing something in one of our facilities like the community center where it has a kitchen that would have, be able to do something more so than what the fire hall can even. But again, for now, having 2 regional sort of shelters to go, and a shelter is different than a warming center. A warming center is a place you go to warm and charge your phones and maybe have a hot cup of coffee. A shelter would be when people have to be evacuated from their homes, so it's much more substantial, so they have to maybe sleep there for some nights. So that's the difference. So we're looking at 2 areas right now. One is outside of Chester and one's in the Bridgewater area. And that's really about as central as you can get. It's not great for us, but it's 20 minutes away, really. Deputy Mayor?
Just to clarify too, and further describing that whatever the places that are identified as emergency shelters need a generator. And the community college, I think was the main area, and their generator only covers partial parts of the building. It doesn't cover enough space to be a proper emergency shelter. So looking to ensure that we have the proper facilities if they're needed.
Okay, is everybody good with that then? We'll see that in our budget anyways. Okay, so thank you very much. So notice of motions, council reports. We'll start this week to our left. Councillor Fullerton.
Nothing to report tonight, thanks.
Councillor Green. Councillor Babineau. Deputy Mayor.
I just want to, we covered this a bit in the meeting last night, but just the tragedy in Gloucester and acknowledging that we very much recognize the horrible situation that the citizens are experiencing there, and thank you to our mayor and staff for demonstrating our support of that situation.
Thank you. Councillor Daphne.
Congratulations to Owen Hubley for making the 2025-26 Team Atlantic Para Hockey Team. Owen is the son of our very own Crystal Behringer. Crystal is one of the smiling faces you would see when you're paying your bills, have questions, etc. at the town hall. The team is going to Montreal for the Nationals in May. In preparation for such a huge event, they will be having an online auction and are looking for donations of new items, gift cards, etc. Maybe some Lunenburg swag. Please contact Crystal or myself if you would like to donate. This Saturday is the deadline for donations. This week is White Cane Week. Each year, the first week of February, Canada comes together to celebrate White Cane Week. This special week is dedicated to raising awareness about the challenges faced by Canadians living with vision loss. Correct, Renee? Clubhouse and fries being served at the Legion this Friday night between 5 and 7. Don't stand in the way of Councillor Strawn because she's usually the first through the door. The Legion is always looking for members. I submitted my membership application last week, and I am waiting for Councillor Strawn to do likewise.
I get it for free because my son's in CAS.
Yeah, whatever. Surviving Winter Blues with Self-Care Magic, from cozy nights in to a mood boosting podcast. Check out togetherall.com and the simple self-care gems to help you pick you up a little. Together All offers a range of activities that allow you to work through what's troubling you. Access an anonymous community of support available through team members. Together All is free to all Nova Scotian residents over the age of 16. The Second Story Women's Center is offering Bring Your Own Book Club Quiet Time Reading, starting Wednesday, February the 11th, and running every Wednesday until March 4th. Time is 6 to 8 p.m. There will be hot drinks and cozy seats. Please let the center know if you'll be joining them at 902-640-3044. And finally, much was discussed this evening, and I'm sure there are many at home who would like to have a chat, a further chat on a few topics. If so, reach out to council through email or give one of us a call or all of us a call. But I'm sure we'd all like to sit down with you. And I know, just thinking back over the things that we talked about tonight, I have some further questions too.
Thank you, Councillor Strong.
Just a couple of things. Long before we had a housing accelerator program in the town of Lunenburg, there was a CMHC initiative that created what we have as Harborview Haven on Blockhouse Hill. And I just want to remind everybody here tonight that this is Recreational Therapy Month, and go to see their social media is really great. They have some incredible programming going on up there. And I think that everybody benefits from seeing people that are suffering with Alzheimer's or whatever reason that they're there in need of long-term care, bowling, painting, playing games, smiles on their faces. I am so impressed by it every time I'm up there. And last week we got to spend a lot of time up there with board meetings. And it's also a good time to look around for volunteer opportunities on boards like the Harborview Haven board. So I'm just putting it into perspective that today we're looking at a housing accelerator, and 50 years ago, the town actually found it within its wisdom to use this divestiture program to provide land for a long-term care facility. And that's just it for me.
Thank you. I really don't have anything to report tonight. I will say that since Lisa's here, I'll say this. I had the pleasure of going on Facebook and seeing a video that was done by Lisa at Lunenburg Inn. And I must say, if you have a minute and you watch the videos that Lisa puts on Lunenburg Inn, they're very good, they're entertaining, and they're great videos. So again, I commend you. I mean, it promotes the whole community. Yes, you focus on a business, but it certainly promotes the community at large. So again, great job. And that's really all I have to say. Thanks everyone for coming. There's nothing for closed session. So a motion for adjournment moved by Councillor Strong, seconded by Councillor Fullerton. Thank you very much.